Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. It's the first episode of the offseason, and John Mara announced this morning that the Giants are retaining Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll as GM and head coach. They will get a year 4 after making the playoffs in their first year, going 6-11 in year 2, 3-14, the most losses in a Giants single season in year 3, a total record of 18-32-1. And John Mara put out a statement this morning. We're going to talk about his press conference. And John Mara said, now that our season is over, we felt it necessary to make this statement. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented and their vision for our team. We look forward to the future and achieving the results we all desire. Justin, we're going to break this all down. And before John Mara's press conference, I was going to, we were going to do why we disagreed with this decision. But in reality, I think if we just talk through the John Mara press conference, he's been way harsher than us. He just
did a great job rolling it out, man.
John Mara tore them apart. But just his conclusion was like, yeah, but I don't want to make a change. I believe in these guys. He couldn't even say that they were going in the right direction. Like, couldn't even just give us that fake type of hope. It was a crazily honest press conference. We saw Schoen and Daboll. There's not much to pull out of those. We'll talk about it all. How we feeling?
Can we start off with just going, not line for line, but almost major part, major talking point, major answer by major answer with this John Mara presser?
I do want to start with this, Justin. Is that I know because of the floating of the idea of firing Brian Daboll and keeping Joe Schoen has been out there, that we've talked about how like that's the dumbest thing to do in all this. But that doesn't make not doing that smart. Like I still strongly disagree with keeping both of these guys. Like strongly. Like, yeah, would have the Brian Daboll part been worse? Sure, but it can go just as bad, Justin, for them doing this, and it could even be worse because of the timeline that John Mara basically put him on. Basically, a do or die season with cap space and the 3rd overall pick, and what's viewed as a 2 quarterback draft class and 2 quarterback needy teams ahead of them, Justin. Like, this can go really wrong. And honestly, you'd have to expect it, right? You look at their schedule next year. Like, to me, I feel like John Mara is delaying the inevitable of firing these guys next year. John Mara said it. Joe Schoen said it. This is a bad roster. We are 3 years in. This is a bad roster. This is a team that lacks results to go with that roster. Coaching is not coaching them above. It seems like they want more coaching changes, even though that they're keeping Brian Daboll. So it's going to be a second straight offseason of maybe changing even both play callers. It's like you said, we're going to go through John Mara's press conference because he kind of covers it all. But in reality, it's like, how could John Mara say all the things that he says, where he talks about not going in the right direction and all this, and then say, but I want to keep it? It's simply because he just doesn't want to fire them. Like, it's simple. He doesn't want to fire them after 3 years. He wants to give them 4 years. He's tired of firing people so often.
Yeah, so there was a couple people, last night, and like Research Rick, even myself. All right, so Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are going to stay, but where is the accountability going to come from having the worst season in franchise history? For the first time in franchise history in 100 years, you lost 14 games. Where is the accountability going to come from? Like, and I'm not even, I wasn't even expecting like John Mara, Joe Schoen, and Brian Daboll to fully answer that today. I mean, I guess I was expecting maybe John Mara to kind of answer that a little bit, but for me as a fan and as a regular season ticket holder, and like, I will always be excited for Giants football to come back, but man, right now I am not optimistic. I am nowhere near optimistic about this team's future because they had a 3-14 season, and outside of just quarterback, and process, which has been a bad processing, and we're going to break down everything that John Mara said. But where is the accountability going to come from? Like, what are you going to change after you had your worst season in franchise history? What outside of, hey, we need a quarterback, What outside of that is going to change? Because Bobby, like we have talked about many a times, outside of Daniel Jones, there are plenty of reasons why Joe Schoen deserves to not be retained and deserve to be fired by the Giants. Plenty of reasons outside of quarterback. I don't know where that accountability is going to come from, man. I have no clue. And that's disheartening.
Well, the reality is that John Mara fell for it, right? He's fallen for the, well, it's the quarterback. And then I don't know what's gonna happen with Shane Bowen, but boy, it sure felt like he got thrown under the bus a little bit there. Let's go through the John Mayer press conference and some of the things that he said, right? He starts off with the things that are good. With Daboll, he was coach of the year, right? We could dismantle that and say that, well, guess what? All the play callers from that year are not calling plays for them anymore, and they're being coached below what they are. For Joe Schoen, it was the 2024 draft and free agency, which again included letting Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney walk, and the staff that he put together and built, talking about the behind the scenes stuff that you can't there's no way to just judge it off of outside what the roster and the record is. But even though the roster and record are really bad, with Shane, and they really sold him on, hey, look at this draft class. What if I get a quarterback, right? They used and this is how they're overvaluing what the 2024 draft class is, because the 2024 draft class to me is a good draft class. It's a solid draft class right now. It's looking
And
that
also,
way.
why was it playing? Why was the 2024 draft class playing so much to begin with?
Well, here's the thing: is if you say all 6 are part of our future, it's one thing. You could use even the first 5, right? I think it's a stretch to crown Tyler Nubin, Drew Phillips, and Theo Johnson yet, even though there's good signs. But if you're using Darius Moissaoui and how much he played at the end of the season, then you're definitely just overvaluing what it is. Like right now, it looks like a solid draft class. Is it a draft class that people are going to screenshot and look at what the Giants did? No, not right now. Maybe one day, but that's not what it is. Right now, it's Malik Neighbors is sick. Tyrone Tracy is a hit of a pick in the 5th round, and you have 3 guys who played as rookies and didn't look out of their depth as rookies. They didn't look great. Drew Phillips did some good stuff in the run game, but they didn't look out of their depth, even though there's some going to be mistakes by all 3 of those guys as well, too. So they're overvaluing that, and it's the bullshit of, but just the way they do things. The same reasons that John Mayer used to keep Dave Gettleman in 2020. The stuff you guys don't see, the way that they scout, their process, the staff that they put together. In reality, it's John Mayer doesn't want to admit that he got the GM hire wrong after 3 years, and he doesn't want to make the changes, right? Like he wants to take microwave changes as a way to try and fix everything that he's got, right? And that's why he's looking for outlier success. Like Justin, anybody who looks at this roster and situation would think it's going to take outlier success to figure this thing out. You have a GM who no potential head coach candidates wanted to join, right? They shopped around to see what they could get on feelers about potential head coaches, Justin, and they got back that nobody would really want to come here. And so instead of being like, well, why don't they want to come here? It's like, we'll keep them both instead of firing the GM. And you have a head coach who no coordinators are going to want to join. And now we have the general manager, Joe Schoen, is buddy with his nephew, who is director of player personnel, because you'd be an idiot not to be. Mayer has been part of decision making. So to fire Schoen would to admit that he is wrong, not just about his decision on who to hire, but on how he runs his entire organization. And he's not ready to admit that. You look back at the GM search in 2018. It's really insane to look back when they interviewed 2 in-house prospects, a former in-house prospect in Dave Gettleman and the host of NFL Live. And it took them 4 years to move off of that and say that they got that wrong. So they did learn from that and did a good GM search, went outside of their comfort zone, but you're still involved. Your family members still hold prominent roles. And that's why John Mayer is willing to can someone like Brian Daboll, the head coach, because that doesn't mean your entire business model doesn't work. Because if he fired Joe Schoen, it'd be like, all right, man, this is twice in a row where just our business model of running the New York Giants doesn't work. And it's not just who the GM is. It's how you run this team as a whole. Yep. And he is a part of that, right? I mean, if there's anything from this press conference we take away from, we'll never know exactly what he's, giving his input on, but he is a big part of this. Like I've been pretty anti Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Definitely still pretty anti Joe Schoen. But I come away from this day, Justin, just getting reminded like that's the number one issue. The owner's the number one issue because he doesn't look at this and see it for what it's worth. He looks at it and he's like, man, but I just don't. I just hope that they can figure out. And I sure as hell hope they can figure out too. But that's what he's come away from. And then you see his comments, and now he's setting them up for failure by not just having hot seats. I mean, he's taking a fucking flamethrower and just anytime they stand up, just, giving it another shot of gasoline.
Yeah, our guy Ethan did a great job summarizing this John Mara presser. And if you haven't seen it, I really suggest. I think Pat Leonard maybe put it on his YouTube, but SNY Giants clipped up the most important parts. I mean, just start from the start. The first clip that you see Mara, then work your way down, work your way up. This is the basic summary of it. We're staying the course, but I'm running out of patience. But I love the process. But I don't feel confident the roster is better than it was 3 years ago. Daboll was the coach of the year's first year, but he better not be calling plays next year. Also, he needs a new defensive coordinator. Like, you want to talk about being half pregnant? John Mara's 4.5 months pregnant, halfway pregnant. I especially couldn't believe whether Brian Daboll. I don't think you should call plays, or I think you should find a defensive coordinator, even though that's a risky decision and that's a risky thing to put Shane Bowen, on a platter, right? But to year 3, going into year 4 of a regime, and to say during the press conference where you're keeping the general manager to say, I'm not sure the roster is at a better spot now than what it was 3 years ago.
That's a quote we're going to remember right
Oh
there.
my God. Oh my God. You're kidding, right? You're kidding.
That's a quote. Someone replied and they're right. And it was like that I'm not sure I'm not sure I can say this roster is better than what it was 3 years. That's a quote I'm telling you we're gonna remember.
Then why are they employed?
Again, I had a similar tweet to Ethan where I said, hates the defense, wants Brian Daboll to get play calling. The roster isn't better than 3 years ago. He's more frustrated than anyone. Hate that line, by the way. They didn't tank, but they just lost to the Eagles backups, but he believes they're the right guys for the job. And let's talk about like the situation that John Mara is creating. Because it's not just, they're keeping Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll for another year. And Joe Schoen's press conference, I thought he did a pretty good job of saying the right things. A couple things I didn't like that he said, but it's a press conference at the end of the day. But one thing is like I'm not going to throw a Hail Mary for self-preservation. I have tremendous amount of respect for Mara Tisch family. I wouldn't do that. I'll believe that when I see it, especially with where they're in like a good cap space, but not the most in the world. They have the 3rd pick, which is prime to like, you're the first option to trade up in this draft. I mean, like their seat is hot, Again, he says he's not confident the roster is better than 3 years ago, right? So just think about that. But also, it better not take too long. I'm running out of patience. If I'm standing here from a year from now, I'll take the heat for it. That shows that this is kind of a 1 year or bust. I know Mike Garafolo said like a playoff mandate, and I know that hasn't been happening, but they got to be at least close. And I don't see that happening without a Hail Mary, and not just a Hail Mary, but everything works on that Hail Mary. Like he says, we're going backwards, but they believe they're going in it looks like they're going backwards, but they're going in the right direction. Would not say that it was a 2-year commitment to them. Talked about QB as the number one issue going into the offseason, finding QB of the future, whether it's draft or veteran. Like he's saying, we're going to have to see. I'm going to have to be in a better mood at this time next year. Like this is not a smart plan, right? I kind of push back on the whole, well, you got to extend them if you bring them back. And I understand the thought, like John Mara, if he believes in them, should extend them. But I'm of the thing is like, I just don't want any reason for these guys to be kept when they shouldn't. But boy, man, we are setting ourselves up for a bad faith offseason from the Giants general manager, Joe Schoen. But here's the thing. I wouldn't blame him because I do the same damn thing after listening to that press conference. I'd be spending money in free agency. I'd be doing whatever I had to do to draft a quarterback because, some GMs have this mindset in the wrong time. Like, why not? Because if you're not close to the playoffs next year, you're getting fired. It's essentially a guarantee.
I push back on the playoff mandate thing. That's the only thing I'll push back on. Like, you don't think if they win 7, 8 games next year that with a rookie quarterback that
I agree, but do we think this is going to like what needs to be done for this to be a 7-8 win team next year? And you look at the schedule of who they have to play,
yeah.
and that is a part of this. It's not only like, and here's the thing: like, if they want to take a quarterback, we all want a quarterback, Justin, right? Now they're in a situation where that quarterback's got to be pretty damn good year one, pretty damn good year one, or else you're done. And the scary part about it is that if he does put us in this bad cap situation by going all in this offseason with it, because he's going to have to spend money on a veteran quarterback too, most likely. You draft the rookie QB, which means you get rid of the first round pick. Maybe he trades the assets for that as well. Like you've got to go all in, and if it doesn't work, they get fired, which I think is more likely than not at this point. Guess who's going to get the next GM job? They get not the guy who puts together the best plan or gives them the most honest assessment of what they are. You're going to get the guy who goes in there and says, I can fix this quarterback. We just got to build around him. He needs the right pieces, needs a different play caller. That's who's going to get the job. And we may, again, not get the best candidate for the job because he knows how to tickle John Mayer's ear the right way, which is exactly what Dave Gettleman did in 2018, saying that Eli still got it.
All right, can we let's talk about something
Why don't
really
you
quick.
talk
Can we
to us
do that?
about something, Justin?
I will. And I will talk to you about Captain Morgan because today's episode is sponsored by Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL season and the postseason. I'll throw that out there too, is where legends are born. I don't know off the field. Postseason, what's that? Some are of last second plays that turn the tide and change a team's destiny, while others are friends who follow the captain from within them to make a regular get together into the stuff of legends. So grab your crew, grab a captain and a cola, make it a story to remember because legends start when you follow the captain. Visit followthecaptain.com for more. Please drink responsibly. Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum, 35% alcohol by volume. Captain Morgan Rum Company in New York, New York. You will be glad you did.
Where do you want to go from here on this, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, how much can we talk about John Mara contradicting himself? Here can I talk about process? Can I talk about the word process?
Process.
Because John Mara mentioned it a lot. They all mentioned it. But I specifically want to talk about John Mara's process because he even expanded upon what he meant. And one of the things that stuck out to me is, man, the way that Joe Schoen evaluates players, the way that this regime evaluates players, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. So, oh my God, it basically is. Now we have computers.
Yeah. Which again is the same exact thing he said in the end of the press conference at the end of 2019. It's the exact same
So
thing.
even if it's bad, right? Even if it's bad, but the way they go about it and the data that supports it and the organization of the pretty little draft boards with the colors and the designations and this guy's a leader and this guy's a character concern and a health thing. So it's just unlike anything I've ever seen before. So that's the process that you're referring to, that great process that you're not sure if the roster is better now than what it was 3 years ago. That's the great process that is giving you this belief that they deserve to stay. That's it.
Yeah,
computers.
And here's the thing:
Technology.
eventually, good process needs to land on good results.
There's no impact players. There's no impact players, Bobby. And where are they coming from?
He's done a bad job of putting Joe Schoen's done a bad job of putting this team together. Like I woke up this morning and I'm like, all right, what am I going to say, right? Like, what's my thoughts going into this? And I wasn't expecting the news to come so early because we thought they were going to talk, even though they were being researched. Rick, I love to reference him on this pod. He made a great point. He's like, everyone talking about how they're being judged individually. Guess what? Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's meeting with John Mara was on Friday together. But what is the number one? Like, what is the number one thing that Joe Schoen can brag about, right? People will say getting them out of cap issues, but that's tied to letting really good players and some great players walking. Your QB that you signed to $160 million failed. Failing has created to an extra $20 million for you this offseason. So you can be 15th in cap space in year 4 with only one pending free agent and Darius Slayton worth more than $3 million per year. They also they spent the 4th most money in free agency last year, Justin, if you include the Brian Burns extension in that, right? Let's not act like they've been super frugal. Like they've maxed it out against the cap.
They had to cut Nick McLeod because they had no money.
Well, no, they cut Nick McLeod because they didn't like him, and there might be some Nick McLeod stuff coming out in the way that they treated him.
Oh, great!
Is deeper than what you know.
Yep, regime you want to come play for.
So they've spent a lot of money. Like let's not act like they've been just super frugal. Like yes, Dave Gilman put in the bad cap space. They haven't made it. They haven't turned this cap situation and turned it upside down. But they've maxed out their credit cards in both years, and this year they're probably going to do the same. I doubt there's going to be much rollover going into 2026. Is it the 2024 draft class? Because again, that is nowhere near enough reason to be excited. Like we need for this to work, Justin, we need the 2025 class to be way better than what the 2024 class is for this to all mean anything. Like they're definitely overrating what it is because it seems like a solid class. But again, no one's screenshotting and bragging about this draft class.
But really, what it is, it's Malik Neighbors in the draft class, right? And but really even more than that, I think it's the potential for a QB, the potential of what a quarterback with Brian Daboll could do with Malik Neighbors, with this offensive line play that improved, right?
Which is why John Mayer's dumb. Because
that's what it is. Because it's the hardest thing to do in all sports is to find a quarterback.
And that's what drives me crazy about when it's like John Mayer. That's where I'll just flat out say he's not very smart because you just got bamboozled into being like, well, if they get this franchise quarterback that's super hard to get and they're not in the most prime position to get, then it's going to look pretty good. Again, you're granting them to do the hard. Oh, just do the hardest thing possible. And you'll get this thing figured out, right? And again, they're overrating their rookie class. Even if you like this rookie class, which most of us do, you shouldn't be using Darius Moasow as a fact of that, saying all 6 guys are going to be contributors. Darius Moasow can use special teams. He will never, if he's playing defense for you, it's an issue. He's been okay in free agency and his trades have been sound despite some bad trade outs for a drink. But again, it just goes back to drafting. Your 3 drafts have created a top 5 draft picks of Malik Neighbors, Kayvon Thibodeau, Tyrone Tracy, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Drew Phillips or Micah McFadden, right? And then you have Evan Neal, Josh Azudu, Cordell Flott, Deontay Banks, John Michael Schmitz, and Jalen Hyatt. 6 out of 11 day 1-2 picks are below average in 2 years. Or sorry, in 3 years, because that includes that's putting Newbin and Phillips in above average, even though I don't think they're certified in there right now. So but I think they will be. So 3 of them are not even worthy of being backups. And again, it's just hope for this outlier success. Like I said, to fire Joe Schoen after year 3 means that someone may come in here and be like, are you serious? This is your director of player personnel? Why does he keep on getting upgraded? But in reality it's just frustrating, right? And I wish the way they did a very good job with how they handled the media today by saying that nothing was scheduled for Mayor Schoen and Daboll to talk, and it was going to nothing was going to happen Monday.
I hate that shit, by the way. I hate that shit.
It drives me nuts too. And then randomly, Mayor's going to speak, and he gets 10 minutes. They got 10 minutes.
I hate that shit, man. The one guy that we want to hear from. I mean, credit to Joe Schoen. Hey, he sat down in front of a podium, in front of a table, answer questions. Same thing with Brian Daboll, even though Daboll was never going to give you anything. But the guy that we wanted to hear from, and the guy, you know what? This is how I know. This is how I know that, you know what, maybe, even if it is true that John Mara, I feel the same pain that you do, right? I feel the same pain. The least that you could have done is for more than a 10-minute unannounced period on your indoor facility of your practice field, answer questions for people. Unannounced. Sit down and I don't know, take it like a man. That's my thing. That's my thing.
Yeah, and here's the thing:
that shit may not matter, but I don't know.
No, I agree. It's a bullshit PR move. And here's what I'll say too, because where I am I'm so tired of Mara giving us the line of like, "Oh man, it doesn't bother anybody more than me." Shut the fuck up. Just shut the hell up, dude. You just sat there and told us that you're not sure the roster is better than where it was in 3 years. You couldn't even muster up the fake like, "I think this is heading in the right direction." Saying it's like, "I can't even say that it's heading in the right way." Year 3, and you're like, the planes don't really bother me. Like, yeah, I think it bothers us a little more than you, because if it bothered you really, you'd do something about it, right? You'd do something about the way you run your organization. No, but you can sit in your suite. You don't want to make changes, so you want to be comfortable. It doesn't bother you that much. The part that bothers you is that people want you to do this, not the actual Giants losing and Joe Shane's job performance. What bothers him is that he feels so much pressure to do this decision that what he doesn't want to
Yeah.
do.
And you
Like,
see,
yeah,
and you
is
see
he
at the end
mad
of
on
the
Sunday? Sure, but okay, if you were upset, more upset than anybody, you'd actually do something about it.
you see at the end of the presser, you see that Saquon sleeping commercial?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Yeah, did you
Yeah,
see
I
that
saw it.
they talked about it? And
Oh
again,
yeah,
it's just more you care more about, or is your team being embarrassed versus if they're winning or losing. They would much rather lose quietly, and the Giants are very, very bad at losing quietly. Especially they've gotten way worse at losing quietly. At least under Jerry Reese and at times Tom Coughlin, that they lost quietly. At least the Ben McAdoo year they lost quietly, and now they're getting worse at that too.
the
And
Ben
every
McAdoo
time
year
they
they
have a
didn't lose
losing
quietly.
season, every time they have a losing season, it's a national catastrophe.
I disagree with the Ben McAdoo didn't lose
It was pretty
quietly.
loud. Okay, great. Well, that's because they
Yeah,
benched Eli.
well, guys were getting suspended like every other week too.
Yeah, this is
Um,
louder.
but
Can I,
again,
can
like
we can we talk about Brian Dable's staff now, like going forward?
No, actually, because there's something important I want to talk to you about, and that's DraftKings. Football fans, it is playoff time. We've got some exciting games to look forward to, and you can get in all the playoff action right now with our customers at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, they're offering all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5 when you use code WORLD. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in progress games as they happen, making watching the games that much more exciting. So, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code WORLD, bet just $5 on any wager, and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code WORLD only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. You'll be glad that you did. Uh, so part of John Mayer's press conference was saying that he like talked to Brian Daboll about removing his status as play caller, and said like, do you really think it's better for that? And then Brian Daboll in his press conference said that he brought it up and then kind of
Which he
walked that.
lied, by the way.
Yeah, he kind of walked that back when he got pressed on it a bit.
Yeah.
And
Oh
then
no, I'm gonna
also,
tell you. I'll tell you the part that Brian Dable lied. Brian Dable did not bring it up to John Mara, where John Mara said basically said I'm the one who kind of brought it up to him. And then what Brian Dable did, and this is like bullshit, like psychology analyzing. When people like scratch like the back of their head when they're lying. Brian Dable, as soon as he said, "Yeah, well, I brought it up to John about not being the play caller," scratches the back of his ear.
well, he
I'm like,
walked
"Oh,
it
so
back
you're
a little
lying?
bit. He
You're lying."
walked about, yeah. He said Dable insisted he brought up the mayor. Yeah, I brought that up. I brought that up to a meeting. So a reporter asked Dable, which was it? You brought it up or mayor did? Dable said, yeah, I'd say we probably. I don't know. Maybe he
Oh,
asked the
sure.
question. I mean, it was a good conversation. It was a long conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
We have good conversations all the time.
so maybe Brian Dable gives up play calling, which my question would be like, to who? To who, John Mayer? So is you gonna give it back to Mike Kafka? Are we bringing a new offensive coordinator? And then was asked like, what are some of the things that from that meeting that can be changed that you share with fans? Is like, one was obviously the quarterback. And he said, and the defense didn't perform well at all. I'm tired of watching guys go up and down the field on us, and talk about quarterback play. So again, we'll wait to see, but I know Shane Bowen is probably not feeling great um, on this Monday night, and we know the Giants. Daboll left pretty soon after that, so I guess they'll meet and talk over the next couple of days and figure out what they want to do with the coaching staff. But there could be a chance that there's a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator in here, Justin.
Which that was one of the main reasons why I was like, this like having Brian Dable here as coach even though we viewed that as the lesser of two evils, right? Of whether it's fire Joe Shane, fire Brian Daboll, or excuse me, keep Joe Shane, fire Brian Daboll, or keep both of them, I still do view it as the lesser of the two evils. But what in the world is this staff going to be? Because offensive coordinator, I really do not think if Mike Kafka was so dead set on wanting to leave last year, he has to be dead set on wanting to leave this year. And I think he has every right to. And I think it would be really harsh if the Giants were to block that lateral move 2 years in a row. I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job. Surprised to actually see that he is continuing to get interviews for head coaching job. He interviewed for the Bears head coaching job on Monday, which again was a surprise. I don't think they're going to block that move. So
Well, they
then,
can't block a head coaching move, but
well, no, I'm talking about a lateral move if he wants to go be a play caller for an offense coordinator somewhere. That's
right,
that's what I meant. So
right.
again, for a lack of accountability, Bobby, are we going to promote Shea Tierney when the Giants have had a bottom three offense the last 2 years? We're going to promote Shea Tierney from within to offensive coordinator, and this is just hypothetical. But who is going to come in here and want to be an offensive coordinator where you maybe be an offensive play caller?
Well, and here's the thing where it's like, I trust these guys to live out their vision, and be like, well, who cares who brought up the John Mayer or Brian Dable, and who like, well, it matters a lot if John Mayer is like is and a guy who's desperate to keep his job saying you should give up the play calling, because guess what? Now I have the now I have the pressure to do that. So even if I don't give up play calling, or if it's not great early in the year, then I will give up play calling, right? Which is like just like once that happens, it's basically over for you. Um, so you know you can see something, setting yourself up for a situation like that. So it's like you're telling us you trust them, but in reality, you really don't. Like you don't trust Brian able to call play calls. You don't like the way the defense is called. You don't think the roster is better than what. Like it's like, what do you like about them besides how they work day to day together and work together? So um, that's where you're just in a rough spot, and it's just gonna be hard to hire coordinators anyways. So if they let these guys go or let Kafka go and then fired Bowen, like it's just going to be hard to bring in good candidates for this job. It's not impossible. You can get an older guy like Lou Anarumo, right? Like even if it doesn't go well this year, he can get another gig somewhere else, somebody like that. But it's just you're not going to get the young up and coming guy, right? Like Denard Wilson was looked at like last year, or Bobby Babich with the Bills. Like those guys aren't they're not taking their first swing at this
No way.
job at this.
They
You're
didn't want
going
to
to
do it
get
last year. Why would they do it again? This is
right.
worse.
But I'm saying like this year's versions of those guys aren't going to do that. So it's just you've put yourself in a bad situation, right? And listen, if they had the right quarterback, I wouldn't forgive them for the rest of the roster being bad, but would still be wanting to keep them for year 4 because you did the hardest thing. And again, it just seems like their pitch to John Mara is we need a QB, which again is the hardest thing to get right in the NFL as GM. Like you need to be lucky and good to get the right quarterback. And then you're going to fire them after next year if it doesn't go well. So, and again, like you're going to hire the GM who tickles your ear. It's like, I'm almost rooting for them to not take a QB because I don't want them here next year, and I just don't want the wrong GM and head coach being hired on just who believes Shador Sanders or Cam Ward or Jalen Milroe is fixed the most, because that's who, like we just seen the way John Mara's convinced to run this back. That's who John Mara's gonna hire. It's like without a doubt in your mind. So it's just, and then with Brian Daboll, like if we thought this team lacked discipline, just wait for year 4 where his voice just keeps getting older and older, and people start to tune him out. Like all the hope is totally tied into getting the right QB and hoping every free agency piece hits, that none of the ones from this year regress at all. That Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence don't get injured again. Like there's just,
Oh my God.
you're just rooting for, it's just so much hope based plan, Justin. Like that's
Hey,
what this is. They're 3-14, and John Mara doesn't even believe in them, but he's just hoping that they make it work because he hired them 3 years ago.
came back to that realization this morning where when Andrew Thomas was active, The per drive stats, by the way, is the only reason of positive offensive performance this year. It's not explosive plays. It's not necessarily first and second down performance and third downs. They were decent at one point with Daniel Jones. They were kind of living off of third and longs. It's certainly not scoring points. The only kind of reason for and like okay optimism was the per drive numbers. Okay. And I'm like, oh, so this all just comes down to Andrew Thomas once again, like we talked about for years. When Andrew Thomas was active for the Giants this year, they were third in plays per drive in game neutral situations, between the gap being -10 or +10. They were third in plays per drive, second in average time of possession per drive, and 13th in yards per drive. When Andrew Thomas was not active, the Giants were last in plays per drive, last in yards per drive, last in time of possession per drive. Okay, so this offense is reliant on Andrew Thomas being healthy, a Dave Gettleman pick, and this defense seems like it's reliant on Dexter Lawrence being an elite player, a Dave Gettleman draft pick. That is the foundational pieces, and Malik Neighbors. Those are the two major foundational pieces of the team. Guys that this GM did not pick or has basically no association with, besides giving them a good contract extensions.
And those numbers are they're from a 6-game sample size where you're playing the Browns, a bad team, the Cowboys, a bad team, the Seahawks, a middle of the road team,
Commanders,
the
bad
Bengals,
defense.
a bad team, and then the Commanders, a bad defense, and then the Vikings were obviously really good, and that was the worst they looked in. Was in that one, so it's like even then, like it's just like what is like. Let me ask you this: like, what do you think John Marin's like positive outlook is on this? Like,
I don't think he has one.
I think it's simply just I hope they get the quarterback right.
That's
Like I
it.
just hope they get
That's
the
it.
quarterback right. So
And
and
they
listen,
expand
Joe
upon this
Schoen.
year's draft class. And they expand upon this year's draft class. That's it.
Yeah. And again, Joe Schoen, I think, said the right thing in most of his press conference, not going to throw a Hail Mary, but I don't believe him. I'll believe it when I see it. Because again, if I was in his situation, I'd be throwing a Hail Mary.
Hail Mary is
You know,
going to be getting the quarterback, right? That's the Hail Mary. Because they're not
yeah, but it could also be doing a free agency like Dave Gettleman did after his year 3 too,
which
where you're
that's
backloaded. Now they're in a better spot then, but you could cap money dries up quick, man.
oh yeah.
Like it dries, especially people they look at that cap room and they're like, oh well, that's the money that you still have like 15 to 20 roster spots of $1 million contracts that are part of that. Like I can look it up real quick to see how many players that they have rostered.
When you ideally want 10 million heading into a year, which the Giants have, both GMs over the last, 2 tenures have had a hard time grasping that concept, that you need money to get through the year.
Yeah, right now they have 41 players under contract. So you're going to have to get 12 more, or again, so that's like $11 million of it right there, even if you just get all minimum players. Right, and they're probably going to have to sign some type, like Justin Fields. Even though I think he's probably the best. Like he's probably going to cost $5 to $10 million per year. So there's that, and then you're going to look to upgrade after that, and it's just like they're not as great of a cap space. Like they're not the Patriots who have 100+ mil. Like they're probably they're probably going to be making cap moves like restructuring Brian Burns' contract and Dexter Lawrence. Like so, it's just hoping that they don't go over the top with that. So it's just there. Do you want to hit anything on Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's presser? Again, Shane said that people will go at his things about he wouldn't change what he did with the quarterback situation, but in reality, he would. He was just kind of. I'll say this: they've thrown Daniel Jones under the bus quite a bit. I thought that was kind of a way to not be like, yeah, I totally regret signing Daniel Jones.
I think they would have. I think they would have went about QB2 differently. I think that's what they would have done.
That's fair. But he was talking about Daniel Jones specifically, and then he's saying the quarterbacks that we've scouted and believed in have done well, and the ones that we haven't. He said playoff mandate. No, we have to build this right. So if we have a really good roster and we're close, which is true, that should be where it is. But like, I don't see that happening. And the only other thing is like admitting that Hyatt was like, oh well, if we get the right quarterback in here, he's useful. It's like, all right, well, if you're telling me that this guy needs a quarterback to be part of like a starting. He's just not good. Like you can just admit that
Well,
one
he's
hasn't
done.
worked out.
Jalen Hyatt's not on this team next year.
No, and it'd be honestly, it would. I've talked about Hyde on the pod last night or on Twitter or whatever, where it's just like, what is the plan? Like, well, before you had Neighbors, he brought value to this roster. After that, the only way he brings value to this roster is if the outside wide receiver they bring in for Darius Slate, opposite of Malik Neighbors to replace Darius Slayton, is just slow. Like that's the only value. Like if that player is an Isaiah Hodgins type player, then Hyatt gives you some value. If he's any type of vertical threat, Hyatt doesn't give you any value besides like a couple plays per year.
Did you see his quotes?
Yeah, and I
Good for
listen.
them.
I don't blame
Good for
him.
them.
Yeah, and I don't blame Hyatt. I also am not going to be. I'm not going to sympathize. I'm not sympathizing for him either. Like he's not a good player. Here, why don't you talk about something? I want to talk about the tanking thing because I'm actually starting to get a little hashtag triggered about this.
Yeah. Today's episode is sponsored by Hims. Men, life is stressful, and you have plenty to worry about without adding performance in the bedroom to your list. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard, as Dave Gunn used to say, and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you access to affordable sexual health. There it is. Treatments from the comfort of your couch. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/giants. That is HIMS.com/giants for your personalized ED treatment. Options, the products mentioned are chewable, compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. You will be glad you did.
This doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but they did not go all out to win the game yesterday. They just didn't. No, I don't think it was like this blatant tanking that some people try to make it out to being like, see, they're not. This is what they're doing. But it was just funny to hear like they're the Giants media, Bob Popper and Carl Banks talk about like this team will never quit. They'll go hard. And then John Mayer, if I thought they were tanking either one of those games, I would have fired everybody. We'll never do that in this organization. It's like, all right, but you didn't go hard for the win yesterday. And let's just say that it's 100% true. Then you're bringing back the guys who can't beat the Eagles backups,
which is nuts.
For year 4. So it's like you got to one or the other.
Congrats on trying and failing to beat the Eagles backups.
That was like the fun. It's
Great
like you guys are bragging about this. Kayvon Thibodeau puts like an exclamation point. Carl Banks is like, see, look. It's like, all right, that actually makes it a lot worse because that means you're going all out and you still cannot beat, let alone the Eagles backup players, but their third string quarterback in Tanner McGee. But you got anything else? I mean, I'm glad they got it over with instead of sitting here making us wait for fucking 48 hours uselessly knowing what they're going to do. Yeah. The rookie quotes were kind of cute because like, this will never happen again. And it's like, for first time, Newman, huh?
You know what? But you know what? There's no leaders on this team, man.
I love it. I love it.
There's
That's
no
the
leaders.
mindset they should have.
So be about it. That's my hope. That is my hope for this team is that, hey, Joe Schoen likes to highlight character guys and leaders, and apparently that's part of his process, right? Tyler Newman, be about it. Tyrone Tracy, be about it. You're going to be second-year guys next year, and odds are this offense is going to be young and shit like that. Be about it. If you want this, I hope and pray that you lead us to it. If you want this to be the last time that this happens, let's do it. Get to work. Let's get to it.
Yeah, I'm looking for those futures contracts to drop. So on the 2025. So we'll be back later in this week, depending on what they do with their coordinators. If any of them are gone, we'll obviously do episodes about that. If not, we'll probably have an interview on for Friday. So we'll see. We'll play it by ear. Appreciate you guys. Justin, anything else before we go?
I'm sick and tired of talking about losing games in December and January, and I want to talk about winning games in September and October. That's my wish for this football team every year. every year. That's my only wish.
I'm going to watch some Senior Bowl players tonight and tomorrow. How about that?
How about that?
How about that? All right. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Until then, let's go Big Blue.